Invictus launch week, the week where we should celebrate everything in the UEE military in the verse. A week of seeing some new military ships or vehicles and taking them all on a 2-day test drive. Should be simple, right? Well, like an air show, where you could actually fly the F-18 or drive the Abrams. Well, Star Citizen has proved us wrong yet again. I know this is my first commentary video on subject of Star Citizen, and being a game developer myself, I know how troublesome it can be. Features not exactly working as expected or breaking another feature, having a flood of users overwhelming the online infrastructure, bringing servers down to a halt, and much more. But there is one thing that is essential for all games, and that is proper game design. Even if you want every features to be as close to reality, you always have to balance it with purpose, fun, and the time that a player can actually allocate to the game. And this is where Star Citizen may fail the most. I'll keep it to what most players have witnessed during the latest Invictus launch week and go over why it was such a bad time, not just for backers, but even for potential new players. First of all, the everything must exist philosophy. Sure, it is a good idea, having persistence, leaving a trace behind of your exploit or your failures, with the wrecks of ships that were either vanquished or lost through pilot errors. But it also showed that it can break easily. Since 3.18 and the introduction of PES, Persistent Entity Streaming System, we have seen our few share of medical gowns, empty water bottles, cans littering the floor that should be pristine or at least well maintained. You may say that the bottles and gowns themselves are not a big issue, and you are partly right. But it also shows a titanic oversight. Garbage collection of other entities. Well, does it exist? If you found bottles and cans on the floor being gross and just unpleasant to see, just wait until we have server meshing. Those places will look more like landfills. Now, I understand that depending on the type of entity, should remain longer in the universe. Like, for example, crash-landed ships, a wreck of a C2 with its cargo exposed because it got taken down by pirates. Because, well, first of all, they'll be likely cleaned up by players, probably because they'll have contract or good loot, and basically they bring in UEC into their pockets. But what can we do for bottles, cans, and the gowns? They've talked about, oh well, we'll give you a little bit of cash if you pick them up. But we don't have functional trash can or recycling bin. So that's no go. Why not just have a few automated floor cleaning Zambonis make the round? Especially around the food stalls. No. And seriously, it doesn't really matter if they really go over the bottle itself. They just have to delete those that are, let's say, within 5 meters of them. Thus clearing unnecessary data and freeing up system memory for the servers. The more junk you have, the more memory it needs. Second issue with PES brought somewhat of clusterfuck. For a few days, many players couldn't retrieve a ship. So they were stuck over at Area 18, for example. And sometimes you would retrieve a ship and you were stuck in a queue with 0 people in line. Hangars were said to be full. And sometimes I did go and took a look around into multiple hangars and they were empty. Or later during the week, ASAP terminals becoming inoperative in spaceports and station. And that happened everywhere. But in all seriousness, I don't believe that we could have seen this type of issue before. Because most of the bankers know that they have to store their ships after landing. Or, with older system, if you forgot it, it would be stored automatically after a few minutes. But new players, they don't necessarily have that trained into them. It's not because you are shown through the new player experience that you can do it and how to do it. Doesn't mean they understand why. And I've played through the new player experience. It's never truly explained. Which in turn overloaded the starports across Tandon. New Babbage, Lorville, Harrison, but more importantly, Area 18, where Invictus was held. For 2 days, I was not able to get out of Area 18. Well, I did twice, only in 2 days. And later during the week, they basically removed the queue. But that brought in another issue where ASAP terminals were becoming inoperative. So I would stop playing for maybe a few hours and attempt my luck again. Sometimes, even after an hour or two, the terminals were still inoperative. So the only redemption of those situations was if the shard that I was in, basically the server, would have 30k'd. Thus, basically wiping out any of the ships that were in the hangars. Or any data that said, oh, there's something in there, even though if you visited the hangar, it was empty. So one short-term solution for that is just to reinstate the auto storage feature. But personally, I would go a step further. If a player did not store his ship after 5 minutes after leaving the hangar, you have it impounded and issue a fine. It is just like if you park your car at the emergency entrance at a hospital. Get towed and get fined. Design-wise, and that probably will be somewhat of a long-term goal, would be to have the hangars instanced for as long as the doors of the hangars are closed. So the ship doesn't really have to exist in the verse itself until you are about to fly out of the hangar, of a space station or a spaceport. You could have the queue that was in the terminals be brought over instead into the ATC system, and it would make much more sense. For example, you were assigned Hangar 7. You're about to go, you're near Cuddy Black, for example. Good to go, but the doors are still closed. But at the same time, someone who's actually in the verse, so in the game, has already called in and was assigned Hangar 7 for landing. What you will see is just the door remain closed. He comes in for landing. On his end, the doors are open. There is an empty hangar bay. He lands safely, or even if he crashes, as soon as he touches down in the hangar bay, the door closes behind him. And then ATC. And I'm just gonna sidestep a little bit there. But why the fuck does ATC clears me for launch before the doors are even opened? That's a great recipe to have new players, or in some spacecraft, you can't necessarily see the doors opening because they're on the ceiling and you can't get a view. For example, C2 in Hangar 7 in Era 18. But there goes my ATC protocol rant there. But as soon as the door closes for one, then we get, okay, well, we're opening the doors, and then the ATC clears you for takeoff. And instant hangars basically would follow the same logic as in Elite Dangerous, for example. As long as you are not on the surface of the space station interior, you don't really exist to the other ships. And people may use the same landing pad as you would be assigned before you are even been brought to the surface. Basically, they would land before you are even been lifted up towards the surface, because ATC would say, stand by. We'll get you up there when we can. And I'm not saying that PES and server meshing is trash. What I'm saying is that you have to balance those two critical systems with other system. And basically with balanced in with fun and time that you can spend. Everything must exist at all time, everywhere. It's not a good design decision. There are places, there are times where it is not necessary. Also, I wasn't a backer when the only thing you could do was walk around your ship in a hangar. I don't know if they were different hangars back then, but when we look at the game packages and the standalone ship offers, they have hangars listed in them. Why can't we have them as our instance hangar? That could be a good way to bring the private hangar much more sooner than before. And we could finally place the Pico, a Chance Cube, or any other in-game memorabilia, which currently doesn't serve any purpose. I can already hear, but what about when I want my friends to come and check over my brand new ship, with an instant hanger, they wouldn't be able to get in. Oh, my dear Padawan. Did you ever play Did you ever play an MMO before? Just invite them to your party, and any party member will be able to get in your instance for the hangar, and you'll be also able to do the same in another party member's hangar. It's very common in MMO for housing and dungeon, for example. But that would break immersion for those, wishing to steal the ship from the hangar by stealthily following the owner. And to that, I would say a big nope. Do you truly believe that a spaceport like Area 18 or New Babbage that resides in an armistice zone would be without heavy security? Basically, it would just, when you're getting into the elevator, would just be like one of those secure elevators at any office building. You got to pass a card to get to that floor that you need to get to. If you don't have it, then you can't access it. And now Grimex and places like Grimex, sure, there could be exception where you don't need that party pass card, so to speak. But even there, I would even go a bit further. Doesn't mean that a party member cannot steal your ship. So, usually in Grimex probably will be like, I don't trust you. So they probably won't get you unless they really know you in their party. So, why not play how it is supposed to be played? Gain their trust, get the party invite, and then steal it. And maybe later on, we could, well, if they ever sort out the organization stuff, you could whitelist org members to your instance. Thus, not necessarily removing or adding a layer of security, but just making more people available to visit your hangar. But the bottom line is they may have been some very great ideas. Now, I don't work for CIG, so I don't know what really goes on in the background in their scrums and meetings. But they really got to look into all of the possible risk and failure points of a feature and assess them properly by keeping in mind that gameplay and fun may override the need for authenticity. Even if you want the game to be the perfect simulation of life, it is still a game. Well, that is all for now, folks. It is time to leave this grumpy old UEE vet to his rambling. So, get out there, have some fun, Fly safely. Huh. Oh, well. No. Who am I kidding? You'll likely try to blow up a few caterpillars or dogfight with Hammerhead.